Hello, hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for the Hispanic Association Café con Leche series. Today, we are having the Café con Leche series of putting the serving in Hispanic Serving Institution, HSI, the bilingual education at STCC. So today, what we're going to do is have the panelists introduce themselves, and then we'll go ahead and discuss and have an open discussion about the bilingual education here at STCC. So I'll go ahead and start with Dean Richard Greco. Go ahead.
Hi everyone, my name is Rick Greco. I'm Dean of Liberal and Professional Studies here at STCC. Really excited to be a part of this and continue discussion about something that I think is really important on our campus.
Next, Jen.
Hello, everyone. I'm Jennifer Wallace Johnson, and my main role now is a professor in the social work program. Thanks for having me, and thanks for coming.
Thank you. Thanks, Jasenia.
Hello, everyone. Jasenia Lopez. I wear a couple hats on campus. I'm adjunct faculty. I teach psychology in first year experience. I also am the bilingual liaison for the early childhood education program and the co-chair of HAHE.
And last but not least, Gladys.
Buenas tardes, good afternoon, everyone. Gladys Franco, pronouns she, her, ella. I am the interim assistant vice president of workforce development at STCC, and I am grateful for having this opportunity to hopefully learn alongside you and from one another.
Great. Well, thank you, panelists, for taking time out to do this discussion with Café con Leche series. So just so you guys understand, this is what we're going to be discussing today. We're going to talk about how did the bilingual education come about here at STCC. Then we'll go ahead and discuss the successes with these courses. And if we have the ability to have a student come in, we're hoping a student will come in and testify. We'll have a session about that and their experiences. And then we'll discuss about future goals that we're having here with the bilingual education. And then we'll have time for questions and answers. Okay, so moving on, I would like to start this for the next 15 minutes or so. I'm gonna have Rick and Jen discuss. So Rick, go ahead, tell us, how did the bilingual education come about?
So originally it started with the Early Childhood Education Careers Pathway Grant. About 3 years ago, the opportunity presented itself to write a grant for the state to secure funds, supports, all sorts of different things for our early childhood education students. Early childhood ed as a field has really been trying to increase level of professionalism, because with perceived professionalism comes actual greater funds. So it's been a big part of what it is that they've tried to do. What we noticed was a substantial number of our early childhood ed students were Latina females. With that group, they often came in not being very confident in their skills. That particular group of students in the field really needed some additional supports. They really needed an embedded advisor, someone that could help them walk through the process of getting even admitted to STIC. We take that for granted, I think, oftentimes, that process is easy because we work in higher ed. But for a lot of our students on the outside who don't have somebody at home, specifically first generation college students guiding them through, it can be a bit can really inundate them essentially. Things like if you're from Puerto Rico, which a lot of people in the city of Springfield are, acquiring a transcript and getting it to STIC is much harder. It's a huge barrier for a number of these students. So in that first year, we created the liaison position that Jasenia is in right now as part-time, and that Jennifer served in before her role as a faculty member. We wanted somebody that would provide wraparound services from the moment of inquiry all the way through until graduation, helping with job placement. So in that first year, we learned a lot. We learned a lot about our systems, a lot about the barriers, if you will, that really prevented students from enrolling, completing, et cetera. It was really a nice case study. And during that first year, what we had found was the CDA, or Child Development Associate certification, can be taken in a number of languages. But one of the requirements was, if you are going to be teaching students in the language, that's the language that you need to be tested in. That's the language you need to be observed in. And there are a number of family childcares, or folks that have their own childcare businesses, oftentimes working out of their homes, where they were educated in somewhere else, somewhere that is Spanish speaking, were educated in that language, fully literate, wanted to get an education that they needed for certifications to increase their professionalism, but didn't have an opportunity to doing that without having a full ESL program that's, that they would have to go through first to get this bit of to get this certification that they needed. So the certificate that we offer can be completed in 1 year. It can be done completely in Spanish without ever having to take an English course. And those students come out with, again, increased professionalism, teaching in classrooms that we know they need to be in. Jennifer can speak a little bit more, I think, to some of the barriers and that, but that's where this started. And ultimately what we saw it merge into was a number of our first semester, first year courses, that if we started offering those in Spanish, students took advantage of them for a number of different reasons. And again, Jasenia will speak a little bit more to that, I think, as well. Jennifer, you want to talk about some of the barriers?
Sure. But even before I highlight a few specific things that came up along the way, just as like a snapshot, like Rick mentioned, how I became involved, I became the liaison and the advisor for the early childhood education department. And being bilingual, which was something that was sorely needed in that role to meet the needs of our Spanish-speaking students who work within the field, and also a desire to attain higher level credentials in education, it really put me in a very unique spot to service the students. And it started as that piece, right? Being the point person, being able to communicate with our Spanish-speaking students, getting them into our program, into our early childhood education department, but specifically under our grant. And we developed, or our goal was to get a cohort of students who would benefit from the services being provided in Spanish. And along with that came not only, our obligation under the grant to deliver those services and be able to meet their needs, but also be able to give them professional development and education in their native language. And so my role I really look at it as a privilege and an honor, a catalyst for me as a professional, but it became robust in the sense that not only was I tasked with assisting, but I became a part of getting everything off the ground in terms of figuring out what we're going to offer our students in that first iteration and how we were going to do it, and would I be willing to teach a class. And so it really is a unique experience, but super important and crucial to the alignment of who we are as an institution. So while the catalyst was the grant, the reality is there's all too many times where, how to say this nicely, we may present or market or want to be something, but we're not actually doing it. This provided us the opportunity to walk the walk. We were in a position to not only service our Spanish-speaking community, but now provide an opportunity for folks to further their education. And as a school whose mission is to transform lives, well, we can check that off in that, right? And we can also check off our goal to develop into an anti-racist and inclusive institution. We can check that off with that initiative. And then we can also check off The fact that we want to be equitable and we are called an HSI, that's our designation. So now we can check off a whole bunch of boxes where we're moving in that direction. And we've been trying to do that in a more robust way for so many years. So I felt really, really privileged and really, really excited about this. And so whatever Rick threw my way, I have always been willing to rise to that occasion because this is a very, very important opportunity for our institution. So needless to say, in that role as a liaison and an advisor, working with students who primarily speak Spanish, helping them navigate the college system, such as, like Rick mentioned, applying for the college, attaining transcripts, applying for FAFSA, understanding even what it means in the program that they're getting into. Any sort of logistical piece was very, very difficult to navigate for a lot of reasons, but it put us in a unique opportunity to highlight gaps, barriers that we didn't foresee until we were in the trenches trying to get these folks squared away and on the path that they wanted to be on. So things like, even an application that was only in English, or personnel in offices that could not communicate with these students. It highlighted those type of barriers that were popping up along the chain, whether it's in IT, whether it was admissions, whether it was in the financial aid office. We had some limited resources. The grant and this role allowed us to shed light and work towards correcting those and enhancing the services we provide to these students. And also funding, we were able to translate a lot of things through the grant funding to provide things in both English and Spanish. And you'd be surprised, being that we have a large population of Spanish speaking students in our college and our community, how much we didn't have in Spanish. And so again, it speaks to that alignment and really moving towards walking the walk. But the first opportunity in terms of the education piece came as we had our first cohort of students that were fully Spanish speaking students who needed to obviously now take classes in their language. And we first delivered, or I was asked to deliver child growth and development in Spanish. And I was intimidated by that at first, but the intimidation was overshadowed by all of this stuff I speak to, right? The need, the alignment, the desire, the growth, personally, professionally, and the service to our community, and social justice and equitable practices. And I just couldn't not give something that I knew that I could give, no matter how imperfect or how doubtful I was about my abilities, because my first language is English. I'm a Spanish speaking individual, but my first language is English. So I was intimidated, but I decided that I would do it, because if somebody's got to do it, right? And so I put myself out there, but I asked Jasenia to help me. And Jasenia and I partnered on our first fully Spanish course, which was the child growth and development course. And just to highlight, just interesting things along the way, even just finding the right materials to get that course together was a challenge. And that first iteration, Rick and the team worked really hard on getting a publication in Spanish. It was a book from Mexico that was about child growth and development that we had the publishing company print copies for our students so that we can utilize and plan the course around it. We have since evolved, which I'm sure we'll speak to later on, but that was our first time, and it was a grind, but it was so rewarding. It was so exciting. Jasenia and I were so nervous and we doubted ourselves, but you know what? It was a hit and our students were appreciative. It's been revamped, it's grown, and I am really honored and privileged to still be a part of all of these initiatives and growing the initiatives. But I really wanted to not only highlight the benefits in terms of like the ability to align and see the barriers that exist and fix them and continue to fix them, not only for our Spanish students, but other students that may encounter different barriers, but really in the sense that, the buck doesn't need to stop here, and Rick will speak to that later, but even more importantly, these students now not only can have the opportunity to take one class, but they can take an entire certificate program in Spanish. What's next, right? So these students feel, and we feel, they're so excited and motivated to have this opportunity to get a credential off their belt, to get on their belt, to get college courses and college credit, right? well, what's next? And so we really want to provide opportunities for them to move forward, and they want those opportunities. So I hope that makes sense, but there's a lot of good things I can speak to about this, and I feel super privileged and honored. And I'm really excited to see where we're going to go with it. And specifically really proud of the work that we've done collectively and the changes that we were able to make as a result.
Thank you, Jen.
I just want to jump in on something real quick with that.
Sure.
Oftentimes we think of our offices and the things that we do in our offices as being, you know, our sole function of their job is to do what it is in that particular task. So when we think of financial aid, we think of everybody having to know about FAFSA and what that means for an EFC and, you know, what a student aid report is and all of that bit. And we need to try to explain that to students. Oftentimes what I think that we forget is that there's a soft skills that go along with that and an understanding of people when we're speaking to them. For example, when we talk about money, money is talked about very differently in different cultures. You know, whether it's coming from an Eastern Asian perspective, you know, a former Soviet perspective, or if we're looking at it from a Latin American perspective, money is talked about in very different ways. And when we enter that conversation in with one thought that this is how we do it for every person, we're not recognizing the experiences that others have and things that may not make them comfortable. So when somebody's engaging with Jennifer about the FAFSA and they recognize that there's a common culture, a common language, those things are really what students end up sticking with students. I think it's just important that we recognize that it's not just language, but there's a cultural aspect that's associated with all of these things that we do.
And you're absolutely right there, Rick, because as a counselor and an advisor as I am, one of the barriers that a lot of our students are facing is having that, you know, knowledge of what it is to be in college, what is the procedures, and having someone like myself that could represent and explain those things in their language and for them to be relatable. And it makes the transition easier. A lot of our students who are not enrolled, it's because they don't understand these college procedures, and you're absolutely right. I'm just going to go ahead and talk about some statistics that we were given that here's why we still need to do this. This is the data from surveys. In the US, 13% of the population speaks Spanish at home, earning it a title of the most common non-English language spoken. The US also has the second largest population of Spanish speakers in the world. Mexico has the largest. And the way the data is trending now, by 2050, 1 in 3 people in the US will speak Spanish. And this data includes bilingual people who also speak English. So data with the Gen Ed Hispanics be as their counterparts bilingual, also the Hispanic serving versus the Hispanic enrolling. And we also have to look at our community and who we are serving. So the fact that STCC is a Hispanic serving institution, these classes are making pathways, as Jen was alluring to earlier. So we also have to understand that language, cultural barriers, a sense of belonging in open access and feeling welcome in a class setting, it's very important for a lot of our students that we're serving. Also understanding the transcripts that they get from Puerto Rico and maybe other transcripts from other countries, and also understanding that representation matters. So by having this panel, we're just opening the idea for everyone here on campus to understand that we need to represent, and a lot of the time students feel a sense of belonging because of courses like this. So the successes with these courses on our next session, we currently offer the bilingual supports, and a lot of the bilingual supports could be in a lot of ways. It could be faculty and staff, and it could be in literature that we have available, but also as Jen was saying, I would like for Jen to go ahead and talk about like the courses in Spanish. And I know that she spoke a little bit about it, but can you go into details, Jen, in how it is when you've been teaching those courses?
Sure. And I also wanted to quickly add to what Rick was saying in terms of that cultural piece. So it's not, you know, the difficulties around this and the reasons we need to continue are more than just having something in someone's language. The cultural context, the way in which the information is processed by individuals from another country or another area, even, you know, in their culture is completely different. So what it might mean for me in English to apply for something online may not make that same type of sense to someone who grew up in another area speaking Spanish. And so having someone walk them through or explain things in a manner that makes sense to them is super critical. It's not just about the language, it's about the entire experience. And then in terms of the courses, well, we have, like I mentioned, the entire certificate program in Spanish. That was our first sort of milestone. So all of the certificate courses in early childhood education a student can take fully in Spanish. I've had the privilege of teaching the child growth in Spanish, as I mentioned, and sociology of family in Spanish, and then all the rest of the courses between Yesenia and a couple other Spanish speaking instructors, we're able to provide all of those courses. And then it expanded, which again, Yesenia and Rick will speak to more, but with that first sort of milestone, it's now expanded into different iterations, which include bilingual course offerings in a number of different areas. And psychology, I think, is the primary, and FYE. And again, Yesenia and Rick will be able to speak to that a little bit more. I hope that's enough. Yeah.
Go ahead and talk about your point of view.
So yeah, so right now it's first year experience. It's general psychology, sociology of the family, again, and then the early childhood ed programs. In the future, some of the programs that we've identified as offering a potential intro course that would be offered in Spanish language would be social work, criminal justice, and potentially business. Those would be three areas that we've had some discussions and will continue to in the future. The reason those particular programs is they're high Spanish enrollment programs. Most people, when you think of criminal justice, probably assume that the average student is a white male, but in reality, it's a Latina female. We have more females and more Latina students in criminal justice than we actually do male students or white students, which again, I think some people would think is surprising. Social work is another program that is highly identifies as Hispanic, also non-traditional. The social work demographic looks very similar to that of early childhood ed, which is slightly older than our average student. Again, more female and tends to be more Hispanic in those cases. I know Gladys is doing a substantial amount of work in workforce. If you even look at job postings right now, there's a substantial number of them for bilingual educators in workforce. Gladys, do you want to share some of your great initiatives that are going on?
Well, we definitely have some great plans, right? But I have to say that we've been doing some experimenting and we're not fully where we want to be yet. When I first started, I started here 8 months ago, and soon after that, there was this opportunity to apply for a train grant, a workforce development train grant. And we focus our efforts on CNA, which is a high need for workforce in the area, and thought, okay, we're going to make this program bilingual, right? Like, it just makes sense. Our community, you know, is a Hispanic serving institution. Our community is largely Hispanic. We are going to make this happen. But we found some roadblocks on the way, and we've not been fully able to implement that, though that is still the plan, and we're headed in that direction. It's actually been harder than I thought in terms of recruiting the individuals that are able to engage in not just teaching it, but supporting it as well. So there's quite a few postings out there. There's just Success, which is being paid with both Success funding and can also be paid for with the train grant funding. So the bilingual instructor, Success bilingual instructor, and Success tutors. And so we have these great opportunities, but we haven't found the right people for these positions yet. But I am hopeful We also have some more opportunities coming along the way, and really thinking about how can we better serve our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Jasenia, can you go ahead and talk about your bilingual courses when you do the dual event?
Sure, thanks, Carol. So as Jen mentioned, I started teaching, we co-taught the Child Growth and Development course in Spanish, and you know, you think you're fluent in Spanish until you have to teach in Spanish. So that was the experience that we had, but it really helped us grow in terms of learning terminology and vocabulary and being able to communicate with our students, and allowed us to come up with this idea of creating bilingual courses where students, we provide students who speak both English and Spanish the opportunity to have the instructions in both English and Spanish. But in the traditional English course, they have to turn in their work in English. So it's kind of that transition where a student may be proficient in English or proficient in both, but may feel better if they understand the concepts of the course and see it in their native language and be able to translate that and dissect that and make sure they're on the right track. Along with that, it provides the students the opportunity to be able to have a professor that speaks their language, right? So if they have a question or they want to send their email in Spanish or have a, you know, maybe submit a discussion, or, you know, we can kind of, they're able to communicate in their own language that what they want to say. Because at times, what I've seen in my courses, a lot of students, their English is great, but the translation of vocabulary from Spanish to English can be difficult. And something in Spanish that they have in their head may not translate nicely to English. So being able to have a professor or someone they can go back and forth with and give them the vocabulary in English was very beneficial and didn't make them feel like, you know, they weren't adequate enough. And we were able to have that conversation.
I think it's important that we are supporting students in the idea of that transition, so that they're able to move confidently towards that those courses that are offered solely in English. But I want us to consider the use of that language transitional, because I think that the direction in which we may be moving is more a holistic one, right? Because bilingual education, you know, it's what we need to be providing our community. We need to be able to be given the tools to be able to maintain, to engage in a conversation in Spanish or English, or in English and another language, right? And how do we use not that conversational language, but also that more academic language that they need for the fields in which they're going into the workforce?
Kimberly,
Exactly.
you have a question about this session?
Yeah, I like what you said about the transition, because that's really important. You know, that's basic. But I'm wondering, do we have any science classes in Spanish?
So we're going to definitely discuss that at a later, you know, towards the end. This is just more of an introduction of what we've started to do and what's happening, so everyone is aware. So we'll get to that section eventually, but definitely something that has been in the minds ever since this bilingual education has started. Thank you for that question, Kimberly.
Sure.
And just, right.
So Jasenia, was there anything else you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, I think in terms of the bilingual courses, another thing, another opportunity that these bilingual courses provide the students is just an atmosphere where they're with people who speak to their culture, who have the similar culture, who have the same similar language, who they can identify with, right? And just be able to relate to other students, and creating this kind of a community within the classroom with people who look like them, who speak the same language, who are potentially going into the same fields as them. right? And I like to incorporate a lot of, well, in the psych course, I incorporate a lot of statistics on psychology and the Latino culture, right? So that they can learn about what that looks like. It's not really talked about. Counseling within our culture is, kind of don't talk about Bruno, right? And so this provides them just the opportunity to see themselves in the material that's being taught in the course. And also providing them an opportunity to, they have to create a presentation on psychological disorders and giving them that experience of presenting, doing research, right? And being able to present that information. And again, I allow the students to, the students have to present in English, but if there is, a terminology or something that they want to talk about where it's better for them to say it in Spanish so that they can get the point across, I am able to provide that opportunity for them and engage in that conversation of what does that look like transitioning to English and kind of like walking them through that, but making them feel comfortable that they're not making an error, they're just learning and transitioning.
Great. Gladys, is there anything else you wanted to add as far as workforce development? Because I do know that there are, some trainings like bilingual CNA, specific. Is there anything else you want to go into detail?
Yeah, so we are currently in the process of developing bilingual paraeducator academy with the Springfield Public Schools, which would enable us to support the pipeline of educators, which is important in so many ways, but most importantly, in ensuring that the workforce reflects the population of students we serve. So I'm really excited about that project. I'm hoping that it's going to be taken off in the next couple of weeks. And we're doing a lot of soul searching here at the Workforce Development Division, looking at what programs we have and where are there opportunities for us to expand and make the programming more inclusive, more accessible. For example, we have adult basic education programming taking place, but it's only in English. Why can't it be bilingual? Why can't some of the offerings be in Spanish, right? So there's so much to explore and expand upon in terms of our adult basic education programs, our adult learning services, but also in our open enrollment courses. And I think that it's important for us to definitely serve our community, our Hispanic speaking community, but also understand that that is a two-way street, right? So just as we offer courses in Spanish or bilingual courses, offering courses for monolingual speakers of English that want to learn Spanish, right? To that inclusivity being, okay, not only am I providing an opportunity for you to build your language skills, your English skills, but also how can I make it more welcoming for you? How can I establish a more authentic relationship with you? Not just through translating services, but I'm actually interested in the culture, interested in being able to communicate with you in the same language or multiple languages. And similarly, I think it's also very important that as we continue to provide opportunities for the Hispanic community, that we are thoughtful about bilingualism beyond English and Spanish, because we have a larger community where of that very diverse community with many other languages, right? So how can we provide the same level of opportunity in Vietnamese or Arabic or Russian to ensure that all members of our community feel included and we can really build a multicultural community.
And I'm going to add to that, Gladys, it's a segue why the Hispanic Association of Higher Ed exists, and we're a very all-inclusive employee resource group. And this is why we exist. And this is why we bring opportunities like this to let the campus community know that we're here to not just help you understand the culture, but also how can we help you expand on that knowledge and skills and comfortability. So this is sort of a nice plug-in for us here in HAHE. So just thank you for that.
Well, definitely. I really appreciate this opportunity because it enables us to connect with one another and share, where are we in terms of this initiatives and processes? How can we support one another in this work? And what is next?
Exactly, exactly. So we were hoping to see if our student panel was able to come in, but unfortunately she was not able to attend. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and ask Jen and Jasenia to go ahead and give us their feedback as their experiences that they've had with students, or what students have, you know, their testimonials. What have they said to you both in their classes after the end of that class?
Happy to share a few things, but I also wanted to like reiterate something or give a little more context to this idea of like beyond the obvious. Like, I think there's like obvious reasons why we have to do this work. Like Carol shared some statistics about our demographics and how they're changing and how our college is designated a certain percentage of Hispanic students, right? And our community and the early childhood workers, a lot of Spanish speaking individuals work in the field. Okay, those are the obvious, but what about the not so obvious reasons, right? It's literally, if we dissect it further, it's an injustice, all right? And an example of that is, you know, tying into what you asked me, Carol, is in our experiences in working with these students, the diversity within the diversity. So we have students from all over the world with various levels of education, very minimal education, all the way up to individuals with master's degrees from Colombia, working at entry-level positions in early childhood education, making zero money to survive, cannot attain higher level opportunities because of the language barrier, yet they're highly educated individuals. Those are like the beyond the obvious reasons, right? Like those are the barriers that we have to eliminate. Like that doesn't make any sense. And so when we take these moves, when we make these kind of moves and we open the doors for individuals, we're tearing that down. There's no longer something preventing this individual to move up in their field, because now they can get some college courses or certifications under their belt in their language and become more confident in navigating this world, the United States. It's totally different. Even the way, like I said, how things are interpreted, the way technology is used, the way they engage with one another, the way they engage with technology, it's totally different. And so they come in not so confident, discouraged, shot down in so many ways, but yet I have all these accomplishments in my country. And I was, you know, this and that, but now I'm here doing this because I have no choice. That's an injustice. So that is in itself a major reason why we have to continue to push against. And then the other reason is why has it taken so long? Not no fault of ours, but we're up against the systems that are already in place. These injustices, these invisible injustices, the system wasn't built for, you know, Hispanic folks to attain higher level education from another country. So we're up against all of those invisible factors that are embedded in our system, and it's our job to change that. So that I just wanted to drive that home. You know, if we're going to call ourselves what we call ourselves, and we're going to, you know, market ourselves and be designated federally, we got to walk the walk. So that in itself is reason in itself. But then in terms of experiences, you have students coming in and they wouldn't even have tried to apply to the college if I wasn't working with them. They would not have even tried to take a college level course, even in their language, had they not been working side by side with myself or someone like Jasenia or even Carol and Trio or whatever the case may be. So these experiences that we've had with these students, the testimonials are, oh my gosh, what's next? I never thought I'd be taking a course in college in the United States. And, you know, I don't even speak English. I can't even talk to my children in English, right? Those are the things that we hear, or we hear, you know, I came in and I knew nothing. Blackboard is ridiculously hard to learn. And here I am taking 7-week courses, banging them out, about to finish my certificate. Like, that is amazing. And that motivates me. And I'm sure it motivates my colleagues, but those are the things that we hear. And what we hear and we need to change is, so I got this certificate, what's next? That's what we want to change. What's next? And how do we allow them to continue forward? in their education and opportunities? And then how do we provide them with the tools, such as the bilingual education, where we're also giving them the tools so they can navigate the English speaking world as well? And I know we can do it, and we need to stop putting the brakes on things and stop allowing history and stop allowing, you know, the barriers that exist even for us. It's for us not to do it. And myself and Rick's vision and everyone else involved is living proof of that. I didn't think I could teach a course in Spanish. I didn't have the confidence, and here we are. So the same goes for you all, the same goes for our students, and the same goes for the institution. And I'll leave it there.
That's so great. Jasenia, go give me your 2 cents on the student testimonials, and I'll chime in later because I have a few too.
Sure. Yeah, like Jen said, it really gives our students confidence, right? And that's what we also try to build within our courses, is confidence that they know the material, they know the concepts. Like a lot of the students who were in our Spanish ECE courses have some context from previous experience and what they're currently doing. But when you actually put academic context to it, they understand it, right? And when they understand it and they apply it, it makes them feel like I'm learning, I'm applying these things, and I can grow and make my daycare, and become a better educator because I'm learning all of these new concepts and being able to apply them. And obviously being able to do that in their language, right? In the bilingual courses, the confidence of being able to learn the material and being able to speak both languages and presenting in English and just boosting their English language a little bit more, and just feeling confident that they're able to grasp these concepps and be able to understand them and feel confident in just being able to complete a course in English versus having that bilingual option.
Well, I do want to add too, from being bilingual myself and as an advisor and a counselor, one of the many testimonials that I get from students are, especially new students, that they've come from a different country, they come here and they get 1 or 2 years in high school and then they made the transition. Yes, they know English, but this is what I hear from students. Is there any professors that speak Spanish? And I go, we do, but how come? Oh, I just want to make sure that sometimes if I ask a question, I won't be shy to ask. I'll know exactly what I'm asking. And a lot of the times, being an advisor and counselor, I hear a lot of the students, needs, concerns, complaints, maybe they vent. And for us in the Hispanic culture, we understand the frustrations. So sometimes I have a student with very, very high energy, and it's not that they're upset, it's just that's how they express themselves. And we just laugh it off a lot of the time. So from an advisor and a counselor perspective, they feel comfortable being able to be themselves. And then they are more receptive to hearing guidance and advice from me to what they need to do and what are the student expectations and what is school and colleges and what is the training. And I'm very upfront. And they appreciate that, the fact that I am very upfront, because that's one thing that we are as a culture. We just like to help and inform our individuals, or just in general, everyone, to make sure that they succeed. And from the student perspective, they appreciate it. And they love the fact that they can actually feel welcome and relatable and can express themselves without being scared. So that's my take on the advising and the counseling role in being a bilingual professional in this campus. I'm pretty sure there might be others, but I do get a lot of that population, and I worked with the population of the students who are taking the courses that right now are being offered in bilingual. So with that said, is there anyone else who wants to add?
I just wanted to add, I wanted to answer Pesha's questions about the bilingual course and the formative assessments and such. So in the first year experience course, it's a little bit different in that students are allowed to post their discussions and things in Spanish, and assignments, I encourage them to submit it in English. In the psychology course, because of the time period from when I was asked to do the course and then implement the course, there wasn't a lot of time to do the things that I want to do. So what I'm looking forward to doing within this summer to then improve the course because we're offering it again this fall, is to translate the quizzes and such in Spanish so that they can choose which one they want to take, whether they want to take it in English or have it be bilingual in terms of both. The quizzes will be both in English and Spanish. I'm also trying, students have access in my course to Ally, and so they're able to download all of the documents that I have in Spanish. And so the first week of the course, I implemented a video that shows them how to use Ally, how to download the material in Spanish if they prefer. I'm crossing my fingers. I'm trying to figure out a way how to translate the online book that we have into Spanish, either using Ally or some sort of other thing. But that's part of my goal, is to improve on these courses and to be able to offer it consistently, all of the material in both English and Spanish, so that they can feel confident in being able to read the material in both and take the test in both and that kind of stuff.
Thank you. Yeah, I do agree with that. One of the testimonies that I get from students, especially when English is it's a barrier, it takes them twice as much to do the work because they have to read it, and then they have to go and get it translated and Google Translate or whatever the case may be. So it takes them a lot longer, and so they dedicate a lot more time. But those, again, this just makes those kinds of students, just makes it a little bit easier for them to understand and enhance their knowledge in the material. All right, so thank you.
Just real quick, Carol, sorry.
Oh, sure.
Just Annie had mentioned Ally, and I just wanted to explain that to people in the room that may not know what it is. Ally is the add-on to Blackboard that we purchased about $10,000 a year. And what it allows is, of course, to be much more accessible to all learners. It's really based strongly in UDL. So what students can do is, if there's a PDF or a Word document or something to that extent, they can click this little A next to it. It's called alternative formats. The student can then select one of, I think it's 46 languages. They could have it read in audio to them in an MP4 format. So right now, one of the highest user groups is nursing, believe it or not. And the students will have their slide decks, some of their stuff turned into MP4s, and they're able to listen to it while they're driving or study whatever it might be. But it has a lot of different uses, but this in itself has been a very strong uses for our students, where just reading something in their own home language helps them to speed along and do it in a better way. It's really opened doors in that realm.
Exactly, absolutely.
I also had a quick comment, Carol, I'm sorry.
Okay, that's okay.
But when I'm listening to others and seeing, and revisiting everything that we've done and where we want to go, and then having all you folks in attendance to hear us, just leaves me like, well, there's more, right? There's always more. And I just want to highlight two things. One is that, the breaks in the chain and the barriers go beyond our students. Like, they exist for us as well. And tying into something that Gladys had alluded to in terms of her progress and being able to offer similar type of offerings under workforce, highlights that the lack of, or the difficulties in finding individuals that are, one, willing. I was not so willing at first because I didn't have the confidence, not really for good reason. We all have our own self-doubts, right? But that's the barriers that exist for us too. It has a trickle-down effect. And those are things that we collectively have to work on together. So I guess the reason I'm saying this is we need to capitalize on our own institutional cultural wealth within our institution and within our community. So I just want to admonish everybody to send people our way, people with qualifications, credentials, people that are willing to take the risk. We need assistance in order to be able to meet the needs of our students and our community at large who speak Spanish. And although we have every right to meet those needs, and there's very clear reasons for that, everyone benefits. All the barriers that we've torn down for our students and ourselves, they're just going to continue to be torn down and spread for other opportunities for other people. So please, either get involved, refer people our way, offer up your assistance in some way, because we need it. it's very difficult to find folks that can speak both languages, that are willing and able to teach a course in Spanish, or I can go on and on about that. So I just wanted to sort of put that out there into the universe as well.
Thank you,
concur,
Jen. I
Jennifer.
appreciate that.
I'm gonna throw something else out there,
Okay.
Carol. I apologize as well, but Jennifer, I concur with everything you said. And I forgot to mention earlier a program that we just started this week, actually on Monday, English for Entrepreneurs, but it is taught by a bilingual instructor. And just like the value of that in the class, not everybody is a Spanish speaker, but all but one person are second language learners. And having someone there that not only is able to support all students in developing their language skills, but also someone who is a Spanish speaker and can actually translate or engage in authentic conversations in Spanish, or just kind of go back and forth, right? Like that ability to relate to one another is so important. However, I have to say that the participation is okay, but I anticipated that it would be greater, right? And this goes to, speaks to what Jennifer was saying earlier. We need to let people know that this is happening, and we need to take it one step further. We need to go out into the community and let people know all this great work that's happening here too.
Thank you. And this is why Café con Leche series decided to do a discussion on what's happening here at STCC, to hopefully begin that conversation, as you were mentioning, Gladys, because it is so important that the community at large also understands this. So this enables them to be interested in saying, hey, look what STCC is doing. I want to try to sign up for that now that I know this is going on, and so forth. They're going to feel more comfortable, especially the Hispanic community, because we're an HSI. So with that said, since we are going on time here, I'm going to go ahead and discuss some of the future goals that the bilingual education is doing, and us in HAHE. A bilingual contact has been, we're generating a survey that we sent out for everyone to be able to fill out if you know more than one language. And I believe it's out there. And after this session, we might resend it again, just to make sure if you haven't filled it out, you can do that, just to help, increase our bilingual staff knowledge on the campus. In addition, there's future goals to expand in other subjects, such as criminal justice, business, and into social work. There's also a pedagogy, improving the classroom, culturally responsive, and also supporting staff through a Scala. That's something that us here in HAHE and Café con Leche series are looking into doing, or supporting, And then future professional development on being culturally responsive in the classroom. So these are just some of the things for future goals, but Rick, if you want to talk about anything else that I might have left out for future things, and then Gladys, if you want to add to that before any questions and answers, because I know we're running tight on time, but is there anything else I left out?
I just really want to emphasize the contact list again being very important. If you haven't taken the survey, essentially there's pretty much any language that someone might speak on there that that we want to be able to know if somebody needs some assistance in that case. There are people on this campus that that speak Russian, Polish, etc., and we now know who those folks are, and that's a great thing for those moments where we run into that. Again, I just want to leave with one last thought from the way that I think of things. When we are able to become a more inclusive institution, that means we become more inclusive for all people. So for example, when we one of the things that we found in doing this bilingual work was that some students weren't getting credentials like email, etc., for many, many weeks after they enrolled. We found this out because we have a bilingual Spanish, we have a Spanish orientation to Blackboard that we needed to get these students in to get them through how to use the tools, practice with it, etc. Well, finding out that it was taking up to 3 weeks for students to get credentials, and these students were enrolling a week and a half before the semester started, it pointed out a real flaw in the system that a lot of people hadn't seen before, because it was always a handoff between one step to the next. So again, as we support this one group, now every student's getting their credentials much, much quicker. We were able to figure out what that reason was, where the hiccups were. But when we start looking at barriers that affect one group, we recognize that we lift all groups up by that. So that's why this work is so important.
Great, thank you, thank you. Anyone else for one more last minute about anything to wrap up?
I'm just excited to be able to continue to collaborate with you all, those of you that are interested in putting together programming. I know that I'm going to be reaching out to department chairs and other colleagues at the college to continue building programs, really providing opportunities at the workforce and adult education level, and building those pathways into the credit programs and into the workforce.
I would just like to say, I kind of harp on this, but we have $7.5 million from the federal government for education in STEM programs. We have got to get some bilingual scientists. We have to. It just,
Thank you.
well, I won't say anymore.
No. Thank you, Kimberly. And this is why we're having this discussion, because having that feedback is just going to help us generate more interest in that field, for sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, Kimberly, if you know anybody, let us know. Like we said, we are really like on the ground level with this and are starting really small, but we would love to expand to all majors, all career types. And so, although we are small, if we can get a biology 101 bilingual, like that,
I know somebody.
Amazing. So definitely in math too, like anything that we can get a bilingual instructor for, we will happily do. But I also just wanted to mention that I wanted to plug in, so HAHE will be bringing in Omar and Clark again to talk about cultural competency on campus in the classroom with your students. And so that is a PD opportunity where, just you don't have to speak the student's language, but being able to listen to understand them and where they're coming from, and being culturally competent, when you're working with students is important, especially in your classrooms. And he's just going to come in and give us a little bit of background on that, and also be able to give us the opportunity to have discussion on what that looks like on our campus and where we want to go. So if that's something that you're interested, I'm going to send an email within the next couple of days. You do have to register. It is a 2-part session. You do have to register for it, and it will be a working session. So the first session will be a learning session and a discussion session, and then you'll do some work in between, and then you'll come back and we'll kind of wrap up and learn a couple more things.
Okay, great, thanks. And I know that we ran a little bit over time, and it's 3 o'clock, but we will stay for those of you who can stay for any kind of quick questions. We'll dedicate 5 minutes. If you have any questions, go ahead and put them in the chat so we can go ahead and read them off and for the next 5 minutes. And let's see, but so far it's been a very great turnout and discussion.
And while we do that, I wanted to make another comment in terms of this idea that Kimberly had in terms of, STEM and expanding, and what I said earlier about capitalizing on our own cultural wealth. Individuals who are doing this work we become taxed, we become overwhelmed in a sense, because we need others, or we identify those breaks in the chain that we were talking about, those barriers, and then we have to address those barriers, right? Because we're doing the work. So at times in the beginning stages, I felt like, I was IT, I was, admissions, I was financial aid professional. Like at times, if you're the one doing it, you have to take it all on if you don't have anyone else to help you, or those barriers haven't been fixed or breaking down. So it's super important that we come together on this, and that we create new ways to address it, and that we find more folks that are willing to do it.
Yes, you're correct. Everyone has to pull their weight. Well, if there aren't any questions, I just want to go ahead and say thank you so much for coming to the Café con Leche series. It is something that us, the Hispanic Association of Higher Education, love to do, and look forward to seeing you in future events, as Jasenia was mentioning. And I just want to say thank you all, and I hope to see you all in future. And if you want to know when is our next meeting, as Jasenia pointed out in the chat, it's going to be a monthly, and just make sure you look out for the email for that invite. But then again, thank you, panelists. Thank you so much for your time. And once again, take care.
Thank you, Carol, for your facilitation.
Thank you. Bye now.
Great job, everyone.
Springfield Technical Community College, STCC.